It's my honor to welcome General H.R. McMaster. General McMaster is a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy. He served 34 years in the U.S. Army, served as National Security Advisor to the President in 2017 and 2018. He and with another leadership from another member of our Board of Advisors, Dr. Nadia Shadlow, they created a new national security strategy at the end of 2017 that really focused the United States on threats from the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. You've described our adversaries as the axis of aggressors. Can you just give a rundown on what you mean by that?
Well, Jim, there's been a coalescing of hostile states that we've seen across it. I'd say at least maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years, and we're seeing more and more evidence of these hostile states operating together. You might think back to the Beijing Olympics just before the massive reinvasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, when Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin said, hey, we've got a no partnership, arrangement, no partnership, or no limits partnership, and then the message to us was, hey, the West, United States, you're over. We're in charge now. Is what they're talking about in terms of the new era of international relations. And of course, they pulled into the fold Iran and North Korea, and the support for one another is very tangible. I mean, China is clearly underwriting Russia's onslaught against Ukraine with purchases of Russian energy, but also really critical electronics and other products that are necessary to sustain Putin's war-making machine. China's also buying 97% of Iran's oil. Iran is in turn providing Shahed drones and missiles to Russia. Russia's giving them in return assistance. It doesn't do much good, but with their conventional military, but probably also with we're giving them assistance with their missile and probably their nuclear program. And hey, how about North Korea providing maybe up to 12 million rounds of artillery and rockets and missiles and 10,000 troops, maybe 30,000 more troops coming. And of course, what they're getting in assistance is assistance from Russia as well. So, I mean, I think it's really important for us to recognize that they're operating together, because a lot of times what we do is we try to treat them separately or we try to divide them. And I think that allows them to cover for one another. When I think the best approach at this moment, because really of their weaknesses, is that we ought to glue them together, and hang their mutual problems around their necks like a lodestone.
And how are we doing to that end? And what should we be doing that we're not, to tie them together, as you say?
Well, what I'm most concerned about is the potential for simultaneous crises, right? We already see a war, the first major war in Europe since World War II. We ought to, pay attention to that. North Korean troops fighting on European soil. Let's, pay attention to that. And then that conflict cascaded into the Middle East. I believe they're connected because the axis of aggressors perceived weakness. And what we're seeing now is the clear potential for that these crises to cascade further into the Indo-Pacific. I think that, the term that you've used, and I think it works, is strategic narcissism. And that's the tendency to define the world only in reaction to us, and to think that what we do or choose not to do is decisive toward achieving a favorable outcome. But these adversaries, rivals, they have aspirations in mind that go far beyond anything that's reaction to us, right? So just think about, America's tendency towards self-flagellation, right? It must be our fault. But that neglects the ideology of the regime and the emotions that drive the regime. And the emotions are hatred. On China, as you're alluding to, the assumption was, well, China, having been welcomed into the international order, would play by the rules. And as China prospered, of course, China's going to become like us, right? They'll liberalize their economy. They'll liberalize their form of governance. But it turns out, hey, they really are communist, right? Right? We thought that they were, and not to alarm anybody, we thought that they were the Diet Coke of communism, just 1 calorie. But hey, they're like the regular Coke of communism. And then same thing with Russia. It must be NATO enlargement. It must be our fault. No, Putin actually wants he's obsessed with restoring Russia to national greatness. He's obsessed with doing so by recreating the Russian Empire. I mean, he's said as much. He's written as much. And what we need is what the historian Zachary Shore calls strategic empathy, in a fantastic book called A Sense of the Enemy. Shore argues that you have to view these complex challenges from the perspective of the other. And I think we forget that. And we assume, again, it's quite arrogant, right, to assume that the outcome will be due exclusively to what we do or choose not to do. Others have authorship over the future, Jim. So what I would like to see now, because there's such a big opportunity with the weakness of our adversaries, to set a positive agenda across the free world and to pull some others into the fold. So I think we are in a period of more danger, as I mentioned, what's different, but also of tremendous opportunity.
And so the opportunity in the bigger picture sense of it is to more strongly align with our allies to address these threats. Is that one way you would put it?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's time to set positive agendas, right? Our interests are aligned, right? Clearly, China is becoming more and more aggressive. It's subverting the sovereignty of nations in across the Indo-Pacific and far beyond that. So I think the narrative, right? The narrative for the United States is, hey, what you face is not a choice, and Europe is getting this now. I mean, they got the memo on this now. Is not a choice between Washington and Beijing. It's a choice between sovereignty and servitude. What's your choice going to be?